Welcome to Scream Quest, a horror podcast from your host at Scream Quest, where we'll be doing a series of double features throughout the month celebrating the diversity that is the horror genre. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman, joined by May Finch.
Hello, hello.
Will Rotondi.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
And last but certainly not least, we have back again, very special guest, Isaac Thorne, one of our favorites. Welcome back, Isaac.
Woo.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Oh, so thrilled to have you back. How you been keeping?
I've been keeping well. I'm working on a new book. I can't remember if Hellspring was out the last time I was here. I think it was.
It was.
So I'm working on the follow up to that, and Hellspring is a year old now and is just about to go back on a virtual book tour this month. So yeah, doing okay.
Awesome. I don't know how much you're ready to talk about from the new book, but I'm looking forward to that. You sufficiently traumatized me with Hellspring, as we talked about last year on the podcast. I loved it. Thought it was fantastic. What can you tell us, if anything, about the new book? Are you ready to let any details out?
The only thing I'm willing to mention right now is that it so far is mostly taking place in the summer of 2010. Same small town. There are at least a couple of characters from previous novels who reappear. Not as main characters, but as acquaintances of the protagonist. But that's about all I want to say about it at this point.
Fantastic. I do plan on reading The Gordon Place. Is it The Gordon Place or Gordon Place? That's your first novel, right?
That correct. Yeah, it's The Gordon Place.
The Gordon Place. Got it.
That one is I released that in 2019, I believe.
That's on the list for. I think I might actually download it on the Kindle for the plane ride, which I'm taking tomorrow for spooky season, because
Awesome.
I enjoyed Hellspring. So I'll let you know what I think. But I'm excited to hear that it's connected. This new one is going to be connected the same way that Hellspring and Gordon Place were a little bit. It's cool. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about a pair of possession films. First up, we watched The Pope's Exorcist, starring Russell Crowe. And then I guess indie and award show darling, not award show, what's the word I'm looking for? Festival darling, Talk to Me, which was very, very interesting. So let's dive right in with initial impressions. You can do both films. And then I want to kind of like talk about these as very different representations of the possession subgenre in horror, which I think is quite popular right now. A little bit of a resurgence back when I think The Conjuring came out in like 2011, 2012, somewhere around there, and it seems to be a lot of these films. So since you're our guest, Isaac, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I watched The Pope's Exorcist first a few days ago, and my primary reaction to it on social media afterward was "Holy Crow." CROWE, because he does just an incredible job at his portrayal of that high position Catholic priest with trauma that he tries to cover up with a sense of humor. And it just I think I said that I went in kind of expecting it to be a Friedkin Blatty clone, sort of. And in the beginning, I was afraid that opinion was or that expectation was being confirmed. But then it turns into this kind of Friedkin Spielbergian, combination of things when I guess about midway through when Crow's character starts putting the puzzle pieces together to figure out what's going on in this house. But I loved that movie. I thought it was an incredibly fresh take on possession from the religious Catholic perspective. Talk to Me was probably the best way you could present a modern possession movie. It's young people doing this video trend where they get possessed by spirits, and obviously, of course, something eventually goes wrong. The situation gets too hot, but I wasn't sure what to expect with that. I knew it was getting very, very high praise, and I really enjoyed it. It was a brutal movie. There's a lot of grief. um I mean, grief is the primary plot element in there, and I thought it was amazing. It shocked me in a number of ways, and that's not really easy to do.
Wow, high praise. Amazing. Will, I'm just gonna go right up here vertically on the screen from how I see it. So you're next, buddy. Give me your initial impressions for both of these.
Sure. So the Pope's Exorcist, I agree with Isaac. If anything, if you don't go to see it for anything else, go to see it for Russell Crowe, because he pretty much, his character is hilarious and also just fun to watch. Like, even if you don't really get that much into the horror aspect of it, I think you could still enjoy it for that. I like how they tried to do some, I guess, homages back to the original Exorcist with a couple of little details here and there that made it feel like it was sort of in the same realm, but also took a different path with a lot of the material that was there too. I will say that toward the end of it, I started to feel a little bit like it was channeling that old Brendan Fraser mummy movie, especially when people would like shout and then their mouth would like elongate from being possessed. But besides that, I think the only other thing that really stood out to me too was how I kind of felt like they were teasing me, like there was going to be a sequel or like an expanded universe where they're like, we've taken care of one of these spaces, but there's 199 more out there. And I'm like, are we assembling a team? Is this going somewhere? And then it just cuts to like the epilogue and basically like just a plug for Father Amorth's books, which I was totally okay with too. As for Talk to Me, I really enjoyed that film. Like I agree as well with like the praise that it's been getting, that it was, I enjoyed it for the practical effects. I enjoyed it for like the just how much terror slowly builds throughout the film. It's creepy. It's got a lot of head trauma. I was pleasantly surprised that it was not as predictable as I thought it was gonna, as some horror films could be. And there were moments that genuinely, like, I felt stressed out by it. I did not expect that to happen. So also, I think overall, the message behind the film, besides trying to find positive ways to channel your grief, is also do not engage in the latest TikTok challenge. But here we are. And there wouldn't be a plot. So, but yeah, I liked both. But ultimately, if I had to choose, like off the bat, one of the two, I like Talk to Me more. So, but I'm excited to talk about these, and also May, to hear about what you thought.
So similar feelings about the Pope's Exorcist. Russell Crowe carried that film the whole way through. I do genuinely enjoy the way he plays Father Amort, because when you have a very kind of old, know-it-all, kind of gruff character in a position of power, that can come off as kind of just not very entertaining, at least to me. But he made it like self-aware enough that I ended up loving Amorth. And I feel like I was very invested emotionally for the first maybe hour, because I thought that the family coming in was interesting, and that I was getting a little bit more than I was kind of expecting to from an Exorcist sequel. And then it just turns into National Treasure of the Vatican, which I wasn't expecting. And that was great too. But yeah, I think Isaac, you said it got very Spielberg, and I'd have to agree with that 100%. Just a complete tone shift. It was entertaining, and I think it kept the movie more engaging than it would have been otherwise. But it was not something I saw coming. And then I laughed at that final scene as well when they're like, "There's 199 more of these," and we're trying to set up for a sequel. I also had a bit of a cringe moment when they were trying to explain away the Spanish Inquisition as, "Oh, that was the devil. That wasn't the Catholic Church." While
I
admitting
yelled
that
propaganda. I was like, propaganda,
Yeah.
propaganda. It's Catholic propaganda.
And it was especially funny because like they had that whole like side narrative, but also admitted that I'm blanking on the name of the girl that haunts him, but the girl that died, they admit that she had been like abused by the Catholic Church and stuff like that. It's like, okay, so I don't know. Maybe that was the devil too in this universe. So yeah, bit too much propaganda, but otherwise an enjoyable film that was not going where I expected it to. Talk to me. I will echo everyone else in saying that it was fantastic. I loved it. Probably the best horror movie I've seen in the last year or two, at least, probably longer. I was joking with the guys over chat about I have a new like metric for how scary a movie is, and it's how many times my Apple Watch heart rate monitor goes off. And it was still going off after I finished the movie. That's how much it had me going. So props to it for that, for actually genuinely scaring me. And yeah, for having a very layered emotional story that was told in 90 minutes. It's the best thing about it. It's only 90 minutes.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
we're a big fan of the tight 90 on this
Mhm.
podcast sometimes. I'm probably the most forgiving person, I think, like maybe on the podcast for longer films, but
Yeah, I
thanks
thought it
for
was really great, really refreshing, and the child actors too really stood out. Like I was very impressed with the acting, and especially given how gory it got in certain places.
Well, I think you guys covered most of what I had to say about both of these two films. I will say I think The Post Exorcist worked best when it was more Spielberg / The Mummy than a straightforward this is The Exorcist, homage, like supercut. Like I genuinely like if they were gonna make a sequel to this, lean all the way into that Mission Impossible, we have a team, like to go to these different sites. Like I want that movie. Like I don't care about like trying to say anything too profound. I did think the messaging was good and it was handled pretty well in the film, but yeah, just give me the team. Like it kind of evoked I don't know if anyone here's seen John Carpenter's Vampires, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of the sort of ragtag, they're part of the Catholic Church kind of, but they're vampire slayers, but they party and they're a little more like rough around the edges, not to that extreme, but I did get that vibe just a little bit, which was a lot of fun from Russell Crowe. Agree, he carried the film. And last thing I would add is I could listen to Ralph Ineson like read a soup label. That guy's got the most amazing voice. He voices the demon, but he's been in films like The Green Knight and like The Witch. Just an amazing voice. As far as Talk to Me, man, I cannot believe like how much originality there still is in horror filmmaking and novels. It blows me away that people can still make something as creative and original as this with how long that genre has been around. And it seems like, for every franchise, sorry if you like Saw, but like Saw that just won't die, like you have stuff like this that comes out and it's mind-blowing. I was enraptured. I thought the setup was amazing, the conceit was great, and makes perfect sense that YouTubers, like I looked up the directors, they're YouTubers, they have a YouTube channel that was like horror comedy, and to I guess get enough money together and to put something out like this just goes to show that great horror ideas can come from anywhere. And this is one I'll definitely be watching it again. It reminded me of the same like kind of feeling that I had the first time I watched It Follows, where it was like, this is such a cool, simple, amazing premise for a horror film that just works. Like, you can just stick to this very simple but no less compelling idea. The makeup effects were so gross. Oh my gosh. Wonderful and gross. The way that kid looks in the bed, like after he's been all like bashed up, was just like, I kind of wanted to look away. That's not usually something that I do in horror films. It was very realistic. So yeah, enjoyed it. So I think it sounds like we're all pretty much unanimous on how we felt about the films, which is just a lot of fun. So these are possession films, and as I said at the top of the show, the horror genre is very diverse, and I think this is a really good example of how you can have the same sort of subgenre within horror and do something completely different. So I want to talk about the possession itself to start off with, like, and just namely how that is handled, and kind of compare and contrast and discuss how you guys feel about that in each of the films. So I'm gonna go kind of snake draft style and go to May first. And any thoughts that you have on how possession, like the concept of possession, is handled in each of these?
Yeah. So first of all, you don't need this to like make movies like The Exorcist scary, but I do feel like it's scarier if you have a heavily Catholic or like certain type of Christian background. And I don't, at least in that regard. So like I've never like really been all that scared by like the original Exorcist or like movies in that genre generally. That being said, I do feel like what really stood out about the way possession happened in Talk to Me was that it didn't have a specific religious basis. It was just kind of this new set of rules that was contained within the film itself, instead of being something you kind of would have to know from your religious background or culturally to understand with a film like The Exorcist. And I feel like that off the bat made it stronger, just that it kind of adhered to its own internal rules of how possession works. I also appreciated that both films kind of broke those rules in different ways, or at least muddied them. Like Pope's Exorcist, or it's originally just possession of a young boy and the demon trying to get let in to Father Amort, and then suddenly the demon's taking over another child, and they find out, oh, this demon can possess multiple people and doesn't even have to be invited in.
It's a great party trick, I guess.
And like there's all this other stuff happening that isn't directly caused by any of the possessed beings, just kind of like stuff getting thrown around or things like that. And like it's different from the original Exorcist, but in some ways it just kind of seemed like not totally earned to me. Whereas in Talk to Me, I love that it's made clear that the reason things aren't following the rules is that they made a mistake basically in holding on to the hand too long, and it's just uncharted territory. No one knows exactly what happens there, except that one guy, went and tried to kill his brother and killed himself. So I feel like that adds to the terror too, is that they don't explain what happens when that happens in the universe. No one knows, and so that adds to the horror of trying to fix it later. Overall, I think I like the possession better in Talk to Me, just because it was like new and different. But I do appreciate how the Pope's Exorcist tried to kind of go above and beyond, at least the original Exorcist. I'll admit I haven't seen the other Exorcist movies, but I've seen other films and shows where that's a thing or a trope. And I do appreciate the attempt to raise the stakes. It just didn't quite work for me.
I would say that I think it's interesting, the idea that a demon can possess more than one person, since it usually is just isolated to one entity. I guess in this case, at first it was like a young boy at the beginning of the film, right? And then it sort of like transferred into the pig maybe for like a second. So I like the idea that it can move, but I guess I question, and this is for me also sort of like looking at it from the religious aspect, and I kind of want to know, like, if there's a rule book for that kind of thing. Like, give me sort of like the guide to what demons can and can't do, and does this follow that, or is this just sort of like, you know, also taking liberty with Hollywood and that whole thing? But because for me, I'm like, why doesn't the demon just like immediately go and possess somebody else? Or if the pigs did, why doesn't he just jump back into the kid? But then that's me probably nitpicking a little bit too hard about demonic possession. And Talk to Me, I like that. And I apologize if this has been done before. For me, it was the first time I had ever seen the option where somebody was permitting whatever spirit was out there to inhabit them, like giving that
It's like
permission to do it.
consensual, like possession in a
Yeah.
way. Like I don't know if it's the right word to use, but kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a slightly similar thing in Haunting of Bly Manor, but that's the only
Okay.
other place I've seen it.
Yeah, for me, it felt kind of like when you're letting a vampire in, you know, like you have to invite them through the threshold. So yeah, I liked that aspect of it. I thought that was interesting. And I also like too that they think it's just like spirits of dead people, and then it's sort of like, well, I mean, it could be, but there's kind of this feeling. One of the characters even mentions like sometimes they sort of like try to convince you otherwise, like there's something that they're not. You're like, okay, I got it. So don't really trust anything that you see from the other side, because it might be a representation of somebody who's passed, or it might also be somebody who's trying to trick you. So I like that aspect. I liked the that added a little bit extra sort of terror, growing dread about what's going to happen toward the end, and also then sort of reaffirmed to me what happens to the brother at the beginning of the film that we see that we don't really learn much about until about what 2/3 in, where like the first kid who we see who's been affected by this, and I am blanking on his name, but please hold.
Talking about the one in the beginning that shoves the knife forcefully
Yeah, I
into
want to
his
say
skull.
Yeah, I want to say it was Duckett, because it's Cole and Duckett, I think, are the two brothers, and Cole,
Yes.
maybe Cole, who's going to the party to find his brother Duckett. Yeah, and so when you see Duckett and you see all the scratches that are on his back, and you hear what he's saying, you know, about like it's not the real you, or it's not, you know, like just sort of understanding how his perception of reality has become twisted by that. I appreciated then having sort of that little aspect of maybe you don't really want to play with the spirits that may want to come and have a chat or do a little bit more than that. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I really like Talk to Me. Like I'm be thinking about that movie for days, man. That was great.
I love that. I thought the Talk to Me possession was really unique in possession movies because of what because of the consent, because of the shared power there. Like the kids have the ability to to invite the possession, and that as long as they have their friends around to cancel it, you know, to end it. Whereas in the Pope's Exorcist and more traditional possession movies, the demon comes in uninvited and you cannot get rid of it, you know, without the special interference of the priest. So I thought Talk to Me did that in a unique modern way and really well, and it was fascinating to get the background story on the hand, um and you know how the rules kind of came about, the Colin Duckett thing. I didn't understand in the beginning why we were cutting from that to this other story, and it had me worried, honestly. The whole, like, you know, first 15 minutes of the movie had me concerned that we were going to get these little vignettes that didn't really connect to the rest of the story later, the Colin Duckett thing and the kangaroo thing, because it took a long time for those pieces to kind of fall into place.
Yep.
but they eventually did, and I thought they did that extremely well. Um, on the Pope's Exorcist, the thing, what Will mentioned about the pig, that I assumed was tied back to a New Testament story where Jesus casts a demon from a guy, and he asked the demon its name, and it says its name is it says we are legion, I think. So he has all these demons possessing him, and Jesus forces the casts the demons from the man into pigs, and the pigs go insane and run off a cliff and kill themselves. So I assumed that the priest's name is blanking on me now, but I assumed that the priest was, yeah, I assumed that that was kind of a callback to that, since we're in this biblical realm. He casts it into the pig, kills the pig, therefore the demon is vanquished. So it was a much more traditional take, but I did appreciate um the kid's portrayal of being possessed. Just the look of that actor, there's a kind of haunting around his eyes anyway, but when he has that angry look on his face, and with the makeup and the dubbed voice coming out of him, I thought that was incredibly effective in a way that that Reagan in The Exorcist couldn't have been without the makeup. If
Yes.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think the makeup adds to it, but he's scary and as you said, sort of haunted already, like in his appearance, and he's got a lot of anger. Like, he's able to twist his face and do these really, really great grimaces and kind of nasty expressions that have nothing to do with the makeup. It's how he emotes, which is really cool. Sweet. Well, I will say probably my favorite thing about the Pope's Exorcist demon and the possession angle, like, altogether, was I love that he had a plan. Like, it's not often that you see like a demon with like this kind of world ending like master plan. I thought that was really kind of cool and subversive, that instead of just causing some chaos and causing a little bit of suffering in a familial unit, he's like, nah, I'm gonna infiltrate the church and really, really wreak some havoc, which is neat. And I think that's kind of a callback to the Inquisition again, where they're wanting to cause the mischief, right? So I thought that was really, really cool. One of the things that I was kind of hoping for a bit more of, or maybe not even that, like, I thought the film was going to go a certain direction, which is there going to be ambiguity on if these people are actually possessed or not? Like, because the opening scene, I think, was a little bit ambiguous, and he discusses, hey, mental health is going to be important for 95% or whatever it is in these cases. I give them what they need in the moment, and then we give them to a mental health professional to get the long-term care that they need. So I thought, okay, is the film going to be then this, where you're trying to work out and then the little eye thing behind Will happen? And I was like, oh, no, there's no ambiguity whatsoever. He's possessed, like, absolutely possessed. But hey, I appreciated that. I think that was totally fine, the direction. I kind of called it wrong a little bit early. Talk to me, man. Yeah, like the fact that it is a TikTok trend, and I like that they kind of almost portray it like teenagers doing whippets, sort of, where there's this euphoria and they're kind of addicted to the idea of, not just for like the views and the trends, but there is a sort of feeling that they get from doing it that makes them more and more inclined to want to do it over and over and over again. So I thought that was kind of neat as well, portraying it as almost like an addictive drug in a way, or like almost like an adrenaline chase, I guess. I was surprised by some of the funnier moments with the demon possession, the making out with the dog. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, ultimately, I think like I have to give the nod. Like, not that we're really having to choose between the films, but I think that unbelievably unique way to handle it. Everything from the hand, which is very monkey paw esque to me for some reason. This weird talisman that nobody knows where it came from. I mean, it'd be funny if it was just like a Macy's like mannequin arm that somebody like scribbled on. It's cursed. We don't know why, but yeah, I was kind of curious if like what the origin of that thing was. Like, I don't know that I needed the film to explain it, but it was kind of cool to wonder, like, I want like where that may have actually come from, and to have sort of a mystery there. Yeah, that's what I got. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is both of these films kind of sort of leave room for a franchise or sequel. So kind of a two-part question. Um, would you want a sequel to either of these films, both, neither? And then if so, what would you want that to look like? And that's going to tie into our game a little bit later on at the end of the show.
I will say in general, I I prefer standalone movies. And not even when there are good sequels. I mean, I'm not saying all sequels are bad, or there can't be a sequel as good as the original. I love Superman 2, for example. But I prefer standalone movies. And when they mentioned the 199 others, I actually was clueless about that. I didn't get the same impression that they were setting up sequels. That just kind of went past me, but it makes sense. For Talk to Me, the only reason I would want a sequel to that is to find out if anybody ever let Cookie out of the closet, because
Oh,
the poor dog was thrown in a closet, and we see him scratching to get out, and then never again. That was the only loose end not tied up in that movie.
oh.
And that kind of bothered me, but you know.
Well, thanks for breaking my heart. Appreciate it, Isaac.
I didn't even think about that.
Cookie.
What happened to Cookie? I want a deleted scene.
I think the Pope's Exorcist can stay where it's at. It doesn't need a sequel. I did think it was kind of funny. I think mostly because it felt kind of campier toward the end of the film, that I thought, oh man, they could and they might, because money. But I mean, I don't know. On the one hand, would I watch Russell Crowe play that character again? Probably. I would probably pay money to do that. Is it necessary? Probably not. So I think for that, I'm okay with it not having a sequel. I do think if they do a sequel to Talk to Me, I'm kind of torn too, because I'm sort of where Isaac is at, where on the one hand, when you have a really good standalone film, you don't want to mess with it. But at the same point, if you have something that's a compelling story that you think adds to the universe or adds some layer to understanding what's been going on, then I guess it's worth a shot. I mean, I would kind of like to know what happened to Mia afterwards, like what the experience might be like from the other side. Like, we just get a little glimpse where, yeah, I mean, spoilers obviously for the podcast, but when she is dead at the end of the film, and then touches the hand from the other end, and then we find out where the other hand has been at, or generally speaking, I guess, where the other hand, that it is out there. I'd kind of like to know how that interaction would have gone. And I don't necessarily know that it is necessary, but I feel like it would be interesting, maybe more just for her character arc and for all the trauma that she's gone through, if there's any sort of, I don't know, adventure that she could have from the other side to find closure. But I don't know if that could be the case, or how you would do that. So it would be an interesting idea, but I don't know if that would be something they would go with, or if it would just simply be, well, we've got the other hand. Now we're going to have sort of a spin-off story about how people deal with it in this other location. Or did they actually destroy the hand that we saw for most of the film? because they were talking, I think, at one point about how like, oh, there's like a real human hand that's buried underneath all that covering, and I can't remember the name of the character that mentions like you should just burn it, just burn the thing when they're finally deciding to like be rid of it. So I kind of want to know what happened to that hand, and as well as the other one that we see. So I could see it going either way. I think more so because I like Talk to Me so much. If they can keep that good, juju going, then I would give it a shot. But who knows?
You just got to get the two of the hands together and make them arm wrestle. That's what you do. Just put them on a table.
Put them together, and then somebody says, "Talk to me," and then I let you in and see what does that like create like a, I don't know, some strange vortex.
Yeah, it's gonna be like the
portal.
Ghostbusters crossing the stream. Like I don't know.
Event Horizon go through like a gravity well, and yeah.
I'm also not a sequel slash prequel person, generally speaking. Especially with an indie darling like Talk to Me, it's like, nope, this movie has a dear place in my heart now. I really don't want, like Will said, anyone kind of messing with it. Even though I still feel really bad for Mia and like had that same urge for like closure with her character. At the end of the day, sometimes a horror story is just sad and scary, and you don't get that closure, And as for the Pope's Exorcist, I kind of want sequels to like hate watch while getting drunk and eating popcorn, but not really.
If I were gonna pick one of these two films to have to do a sequel, it would definitely be The Pope's Exorcist. Again, provided they lean all the way in. Like, give me the guy in the van, like with the crucifix hanging from the rear view, like on the radio. Just lean all the way into it, which I know is not like this is a real man. But I don't care. Like, I just want basically like Russell Crowe as Father Amorth, like doing Ghostbusters style, like shutting down all the evil portals. Sure, I would watch that. For Talk to Me, I definitely don't want a sequel or prequel. This is the one that like I don't know why I have this like sneaking suspicion that if this like continues to gain popularity, that they could almost do something like Annabelle-esque of like, here's the origin of the hand as like a prequel film, and then like here's a sequel where like it's moved to another place and country. Here's a new group of characters, and I think I'd really hate that, but unfortunately, I think like one of the negative aspects of horror as a genre, particularly in cinema, is that like it's very bankable. Like you can make it for cheap and they tend to clean up and make a ton of money. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't want it. I think one of the things that Talk to Me does really well, I don't know if I mentioned it, was like the restraint and like having to show you every 5 seconds, like whatever horrible thing that somebody's seeing, like you get little glimpses of it, which is cool, but I like that a lot of times you don't know what it is that they're seeing or looking at. I think that's really amazing. Gives the actors some work to do, which is great, and allows your imagination to fill in maybe some blanks, which is always appreciated, I think, in a horror film. Provided you have an imagination. Maybe some people don't, and they're like, "What is he seeing? What is she seeing?" All right, so I guess I have a unique question to each of the films. I'm going to stick with Talk with Me for a second, and ask you one at a time. Would you do The Thing, given the option? Would you do The Thing? Would you invite it in? Would you well, you could almost go like, yes, I would say Talk to Me and like look, but I wouldn't invite it in. So Isaac, I'll start with you.
I would definitely say Talk to Me. I cannot imagine myself ever saying I let you in. Just because I really don't like to be out of control of myself. I'm not one that's ever really like been into substances or anything like that, because for that reason I don't like feeling out of control. So yeah, I would want to talk to whoever's over there, especially if like in Mia's case it was someone I had lost that I thought I could get some closure with. I would definitely say talk to me, but yeah, no way would I let it in.
Fair.
I'm gonna be lame and say no to both.
Hey, there's no wrong answer, man.
I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna be like, I think her name was Jade. I'm gonna leave the room.
That's perfectly fine. I mean, understandable, really, given the circumstances.
I don't think anybody saw anything they really enjoyed on the other side. Like nobody seemed like they seemed grossed out or like I don't know, intrigued. I think all the crazy stuff, the funny stuff happened when they were possessed. And I'm with Isaac. I don't want to lose control of my body. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
I would absolutely say talk to me. Just because I do think like the idea of talking to the it's very interesting, and in this universe I'd be a total skeptic until I saw something myself. So I would absolutely say talk to me. I wouldn't say let me in, but if the spirits had let me in, that would be interesting. Kind of like what happens with Mia towards the end of the movie. I would do that. I would possess the spirit. Reverse Uno.
Yeah, that was the wilder to me, like things like, you know, it's one thing to let something go like, but I almost think it was scarier to get a glimpse of whether that was real or an hallucination. It did not look enjoyable or fun.
I was gonna
Oh,
say
okay.
May is much braver than I am. I would never want to see that. What Mia saw, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it'd
we
be
get
interesting, and I would get to keep my bodily autonomy, so it's a win-win.
there's some things I'd rather not know, I think is how I feel about that. But so I would definitely say talk to me, and I think um letting the demon in would really depend on who I was with. So I'm gonna treat it like psychedelics, which like I've done before, on several occasions, and say that like it very much is who I'm, you know, hanging out with. If I trust the people and like I know you're not gonna fuck this up, yeah, the cutoff was what 90 seconds, like 45 is when you're gonna start trying to rip this thing off of me, like just to try it once, you know what I mean? And I think it would also probably depend on like knowing my personality, what I saw happen with other people doing it, and if it looked like it was too risky or scary. So like when doors start slamming and all that shit, like I would be like, nah, I'm good. If it's just somebody like acting kind of goofy, like okay, like maybe. But I think the minute like it looked dangerous, I would probably nope out and be like, nah, I'm cool.
When you
Awesome.
start bashing your head against the table, then you're
Well,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
like
probably
that's way beyond where I would nope out. I think I would probably move like countries at that point and be very angry at my friends for convincing me to do that if I saw somebody go through something as traumatic as that. But yeah, I thought it
That
was kind of an
kid,
interesting question. Oh, go ahead.
that
Sorry.
I'm sorry, that kid who played Riley, by the way, in that scene in particular, just absolutely blew me away with the
Mhm.
bashing his head. And well, in every scene that he had to do stuff like that, because he did it in the hospital too, but plucking at the eyeball. And
Ugh.
but not just that, even when he was just communicating with Mia as her mother, and you see like the tear roll down his face. That kid deserves an award. That was an amazing performance.
Yeah, shout out to Joe Bird.
Yeah, it's almost like the physicality that like a screwball comedy like would require. And I don't say that disparagingly. I mean, like, yeah, I'm thinking like just the physical prowess of somebody like Donald O'Connor and Make 'em Laugh and Singing in the Rain, which we've talked about, or Charlie Chaplin, or any of those greats of like the silent film era that really had to sell comedy in a physical way. Similar kind of talent where like the way he moves his body like sells that trauma and that like just I don't know. It adds to the horror in a way that I think, by contrast, watching somebody fly across the room in the Pope's Exorcist, like just like I'm numb. Like when I see something like that, I'm just like, oh, Like demons powerful, cool. It doesn't land the same way as seeing that in Talk to Me. Going over to the Pope's Exorcist, speaking of which, I'm curious, like, so like Marianne and I were talking about this kind of between watching these films, like in between, like having a break. What do you think your personal threshold is in believing that something at what point are you going, there's something otherworldly, I believe that this is beyond of this earth, and like rolling with, I don't know, like somebody maybe in a religious authority, like, and sort of believing, I guess, and trying to roll with it from beyond the realm of earth. Like what would it take for you? May I'll start with you. Like where's your kind of threshold for something like that where you think you would actually believe?
See, I'm not religious at all, so I feel like I could see the two pupils moving and be like, "That's a really interesting mutation you have there. Have you have you contacted the Guinness Book of World Records because you have a record-breaking number of pupils?" Yeah, I feel like it would take a lot for me to finally admit we should call the Vatican. Yeah, I don't know what my breaking point would be. Probably something like levitation, once I made sure it wasn't like a prank. I feel like anything that could be just a really weird health thing, I would excuse as just a really weird health thing, but levitation is hard to fake if there's no wires.
Yeah, what are you talking about? I can float just fine. I do it like on Sundays when I want to have a big stretch, before getting up. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's pretty fair, indisputable. Like floating on your own seems like a pretty solid basis of, all right, there's something supernatural happening.
I'm gonna have to go with the example in the film where uh I guess it's probably when kid's name is Henry, right? The little boy, I think.
That's right.
When he's in bed and Father Esquivel goes to talk to him and then gets his ass like thrown across the room, out the door, into the hallway. I think at that point, I would buy it. I think when somebody who is very tiny throws somebody who is substantially larger than them, like in an action move, something strange is going on. So maybe a little bit sort of like levitation, like you said, but superhuman strength, abnormally superhuman strength, especially in children.
It's funny because like that early phase, like my Marianne and I were like this, he's basically like, we're like at that point in terms of escalation, he's basically like a kid in a Fortnite lobby, like just like talking shit. Like he's mainly just insulting people. I was like, this isn't too scary. I mean, he's just like, saying nasty things, like, and then of course he escalates eventually. But
I am I'm very, very skeptical about physical feats and manifestations, things like that. I adored magic tricks when I was a kid. So I spent a lot of time, trying to figure out how they knowing that they weren't real, trying to figure out, how they worked. At one point in my life, I wanted to be a special effects guy. And that never manifested, but I've always been interested in how did they do that? How did they, make it look like that was happening? So the physical stuff probably, no matter what happened, would not convince me. But the moment that the possessed person was able to reach into my mind and pull out something that no one knows, no one could possibly know, that's the point I would probably be convinced.
I think that is also a very fair assessment, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the world of like the physical. And I mean, especially if it's something you've never uttered out loud or thought about. Yeah. I'm somebody, I think, like, who so desperately wants to believe in things. Like, I don't, but like I desperately want to believe in things like aliens and ghosts and demons and possessions, that I'm not sure I'd be like bought in right away, but I feel like I'd be pretty open-minded into like trying to pair healthy skepticism in trying to rule things out while keeping an open mind. I feel like I'd have a pretty open mind early on, depending on what was happening. Like, for example, like having words appear on the body. Like, I know like that's something that supposedly has been documented and sort of explained away. I'd still be like, okay, like maybe let's see like how possible something like this is. Vocal changes, things like that. Definitely with Will on the levitation and Isaac on the babe. You pluck in something from my brain. I'm gonna tend to believe that there's a little bit something more going on here. And hey, last but not least, before we transition to switching up the order a little bit here, and I might intercut it, we'll still do a side quest for Isaac. I didn't forget about that in our game. I just wanted to kind of open it up. If there's anything about either of these movies that anybody wants to talk about, like throw it out there. I'm all for it. So kind of just a little bit of free form jazz.
Yes. So with Talk to Me, I was wondering if anyone had noticed if the hand at the very end, because I know, Willie, you were mentioning that it looks like they found the other hand. Was that hand right or left-handed? I was trying to remember because that would tell you.
I was thinking about it too, and I couldn't. Like as soon as I mentioned it, I was like, "Which hand did she reach out with?" And I'm like, "Shit, I gotta go back and watch it again."
I got frustrated for not realizing until like the end. Like, so I don't know. Can't say with confidence.
Okay.
You can see behind Will actually, like
Oh, it would
the
have
OG
been.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
So maybe it was the other one because I think it was her left hand.
well,
Maybe. Oh, no, that would be that one
it
then
would
if it
be,
is. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, no, I just talked myself out of it.
Okay, so we all just need to rewatch it immediately. Great. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give it a shout out for its score as well, especially the I really wish I looked up the name of the composer, but um the music during the kind of like montage of possessions over and over again at Jade's house, like that is such a snappy song. It like fits the mood perfectly with being just like a little bit playful, a little dangerous. It's just I love the music for this film. It was well done.
Agree. Yeah. It was kind of like hip hoppy, like in like certain portions, and it
Mhm.
fit the youthful vibe of like what they were going for the movie. It wasn't just strings and like the classic horror of like low bass sounds and shrieky strings. I feel like is kind of the go-to.
I do have a question for the group.
Yeah.
Which mom would you rather be? Would you rather deal with it as Sue from Talk
Oh,
to Me, where you're not involved in what's going on and you expect like the worst of people like doing drugs and like just like assaulting each other, or would you rather be like in the Pope's Exorcist? Would you rather be Julia and be dealing with it and possibly getting caressed by like some demon while you're trying to sleep?
like ignorance is bliss. Maybe in that, like, it's less stressful to be the one that thinks it's just drugs and stuff because you probably feel like you have some manner of control and safety with. All right, son's in the hospital. He's severely fucked up, but he's safe now. Versus, I don't know, the Pope's Exorcist, where you get two priests and they just go flying out the door. Like you're like, well, shit.
I think I tend to agree with that. I think I would rather be the mom in Talk to Me that is oblivious. She has to deal with much more physical trauma with her child in the hospital there, but yeah, at least she's not experiencing everything that the mom in the Pope's Exorcist has to experience.
I'm going to go against the grain and say I would actually rather be the mom from the Pope's Exorcist just because of the aftermath. Like, we know the kids make it out okay at the end in both films, go through a lot, yeah, but they make it out okay. And the Pope's Exorcist, it's like she has like a new faith in God now, yay. Whereas in Talk to Me, oh, this kid that she trusted and let into her family tried to kill her son, and like I'd be dealing with all these trust issues. The whole family probably is dealing with a lot of trust issues and confusion and long-term trauma without that kind of like new hope or faith in their lives. So I'd rather just be blissfully part of the Catholic Church now because exorcisms work. I don't know.
It certainly would take a lot of the stress out of everyday life. Like, kind of having some affirmation on like what's what in terms of
Yeah.
life after death and good and evil, you know. Shout out to the mom, played by Alex Esso. It took me a minute to figure out where I knew her from, and it was two things. So like Midnight Mass, she is the aging mother who like slowly kind of like Benjamin Buttons like with the communion,
Mhm.
right? Like that's all I'll say about that, so I don't ruin that. And then she also, to bring it back to what we discussed in last week's episode, she plays Wendy Torrance in Doctor Sleep, which she does a great job
Nice.
standing in for Shelley Duvall. So she's a great actress. I know Mike Flanagan likes to use her a lot, so I thought she did a pretty good job in Pope's Exorcist as well.
I was gonna
Oh,
say, if
go
we're
ahead.
giving a shout out to moms, man, then for Talk to Me, Miranda Otto, who was oh gosh, I want to say it, but now it's like I
Eowyn.
can't remember the
Eowyn.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I need my Lord of the Rings reference. Because I couldn't play. I was like, it was the same thing. I'm like looking at the face, and I'm like, I've seen you before, but what have I seen you in? It's been so long. But yes, so thank you.
She's also in the Sabrina reboot, which I
What?
think that I know.
That's great.
Solid.
Fabulous. Well, hey, thanks for talking possession films. That, I mean, really a pretty good 1-2 punch. I think, like, you know, it's nice sometimes to do a double feature that's not complimentary and that you're getting kind of two sides of the same coin. I liked having two. I kind of wish I'd done the reverse order. So I don't know what order you guys watched it in, but I did Pope's Exorcist and then Talk to Me. I wish I'd done it the other way around because I was just very disturbed and on edge, and I think I would have had more fun. And maybe like ease down a little bit if I had gone the other way around. But
I don't regret the order I went in. I
what
don't
did you
regret
do?
that order. I did that order and I don't regret it.
Yeah, I think I don't think I would have been able to sit down and watch another horror movie after Talk to Me. So
That's a fair. Yeah. My biggest regret is I didn't see that in a theater. I bet you that was great in an audience like setting.
Yeah.
I really, really regret missing out on that. Well, Isaac, would you like to do a horror themed side quest, sir?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All
I
right.
think I'm ready.
Let's see what we have in store for you. And ooh, okay. So it is a category called That's Gonna Leave a Mark. And this is talk about a film that gave you nightmares, shaped your life in some way, or had a otherwise lasting impact.
Well, I've mentioned Fright Night on just about every podcast I've ever been on. But that one, that's my favorite vampire movie, you know, that and a comfort movie that I've gone to over and over. But a movie that left so much of a mark on me that I only ever watched it one time on cable, and I've never dared to watch it again, was Communion. I almost lost the title of it there. Which was based on Whitley Strieber's book, and allegedly his true experience with an alien abduction. That movie, I saw it on cable, I think in the late 80s. I was still a teenager. It was either late 80s or early 90s, in which I would have been close to still a teenager. But I was watching it late at night, you know, all the lights off in the place. I was the only one home, and the abduction scene in there just completely freaked me out. And I've never been able to go back and watch that one again. So if any movie left a mark, it was that one.
That's really interesting, man. I will confess I'd not heard of it before. The one that I like always comes up that I've also not seen is I think Fire in the Sky. Is that right? Am I getting the title correct?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting. Like I feel like alien abduction doesn't come up a lot or enough, like in my opinion, for horror stuff. Like the other day somebody erroneously put that they watched The Arrival instead of Arrival, like the Denis Villeneuve, and I was like, oh, the Charlie Sheen film, like, damn, I remember that movie was wild. And that kind of had similar like elements of horror, but I think Alien Abduction is kind of a cool, unique, and maybe like a little untapped. Do you remember like what it was about the alien abduction that freaked you out so bad in that film? You can do light spoilers, it's okay.
It was the look of there was a what I remember. And like I said, I've only ever seen the movie one time. So this could be my head, filling in things that I thought I saw that weren't there. But what I remember is one of those shots that are common now where it's the perspective is as if you are lying on a table looking up at these creatures looming over top of you, as like you're on an operating table. And the aliens had, kind of a traditional grays look to them, that you see in like Close Encounters and things like that. Um, but I don't know, the eyes and the shapes of these slightly humanoid but not really things, just looking over you and you powerless to get away, or do anything about it. Just completely freaked me out.
I'll have to find a clip and maybe put it in here as you're describing it to supplement the video episode a little bit, because now I'm kind of curious to see that.
I did pull up Google Images, and those are scary alien designs, Isaac. I'm not I'm not surprised that's how you felt about it.
Yeah,
I
I
think
just looked it up as well, and I had actually forgotten that it is Christopher Walken who stars in that movie.
I did see that on the cast list, yeah. So I'm curious then, like in a more like secular earthbound sort of train of thought that follows, things like I don't know if you ever watched like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, but there's a really great episode of that Stephen King then did a short story as like a homage, where it's Joseph Cotton gets into the car crash. He's paralyzed from the neck down. The medics think that he's dead because it's, I don't know, the 1950s and everyone's bad at medicine apparently. And he is like in the morgue hearing them and seeing them like all around him about to like cut into him. And I won't like spoil like what happens, but that is a very like that always really bothered me. Like I saw it as a kid, and then years like later again in college when I bought like some of the DVD box sets. And of course when I came across the King story, I think he had like a little epilogue where he talks about the inspiration. Does that freak you out in a similar way, like something like that, where like the idea of being sort of paralyzed and aware but unable to do anything?
Yes, absolutely. I as a matter of fact, when I mean, I've already mentioned I'm a big fan of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and when he got paralyzed, my immediate reaction, once they created his foundation, I mean, that's where any extra money I had went for a while, because I was like, he has to walk again. I don't think I can stand it if he never walks again. And unfortunately he didn't, although there is talk now that he actually was making progress in that area when he passed. But yeah, and there's you talking about the Hitchcock episode there. I never saw that, but there is an episode of Tales from the Crypt that is very much in a similar vein. It stars Beau Bridges, where he and his brother, and I cannot remember the actor's name that plays his brother, but they are they're doctors or researchers or something, and one of them develops a serum that if you inject it at the moment a person is about to die, it creates the illusion of death and just stops everything, and then you're later able to bring them back. And he tests it on his brother without telling him he's doing it. And almost the entire episode is from the paralyzed man's perspective as all these things are being done to him to prepare him for uh not really his funeral, but for his autopsy and things like that. So yeah, that's horrifying to me.
I agree. Yeah, it sounds like also like, an homage to the same thing. Lost kind of did something similar, like with one of the like weird, like there was like a season where people complained that they didn't get enough of like what the other like characters were up to that were on the plane. And there was somebody, I think they're bitten by a spider or something, and they end up getting buried alive. Like,
Oh wow.
but yeah, I've never been a big fan of that. So thank you for linking that to the like alien abduction, because I've always found it to be, like I said, a little bit untapped. And obviously like there's the invasive part of it and like just the abduction part of it that's scary, but like thinking about it from the perspective of you're aware, but they're doing all these things to you and you can't stop it is like creep factor of 11 out of 10 for sure. All right, well with that, let's play a little bit of a game. It's not really a game so much as it's a collaborative exercise. So I told you earlier in the episode, teased what this might be about. I've alluded to the fact that horror genre franchises are some of the most lucrative ever in the history of filmmaking. And the task I've set out for you guys, I'm going to give you 5 franchises in no particular order, and I want you to do your best, talk amongst yourselves, give me your thought process to rank these in terms of most lucrative to least lucrative. Okay. So inclusive of all films in the franchise. There is one that like, to be fair, like, and I'll explain, like it is not doesn't have to be just one specific iteration, not iteration, but like take on this, and I'll explain. So in no particular order, here are your franchises: It, The Conjuring, which would be inclusive of the Annabelle films and whatnot, Dracula. So this is not just the Hammer films or like the classic Lugosi. It's like all Dracula films. Halloween, so the Michael Myers Halloween, and I would say Halloween 3 probably counts in that as well. And then Alien. So that's your no particular order. I want you to try to rank those from most profitable to least profitable. So talk amongst yourselves.
I'm feeling like Halloween's got to be up there at the top.
I would venture that Halloween and Dracula would rank near the top, because Dracula, I mean, like James Bond, there's been so many movies over so many decades. How could it not be up there?
Yeah.
Are we talking about like just theatrical box office lucrative or like DVD sales?
It's a good question. So let me
And
look at
merchandise.
this is from Comic Book Reader. So let's see if they qualify.
Because that changes my answer.
It just says highest grossing horror movie franchises. It does not qualify if it's box office or like DVDs. Based on the list itself, I'm gonna say it's probably just, we'll stick to box office. That would be my guess based on like
Okay.
sort of how they're framed and discussed.
Okay. I feel like it is higher than I think it should be, because rationally I would put it towards the bottom because it's only more than 2 movies because it's the older movies, but not that many movies.
It's funny because I would have put it at the very bottom, but
Really?
yeah, could be.
I just feel like because it's newer and like I knew people that went to see it that don't usually see horror movies.
Okay.
And then there's the original one too. I'm just talking about the remake.
Yeah. while I would very much like to have Alien be high up on this list, I feel like it's probably lower to the bottom, just especially with all the prequels that are, we're talking like everything. So like prequels, movies that have come out since then that have added or detracted from.
And we'll give you a hint, like, or
Okay.
something to consider. So, like, none of these have been adjusted for inflation. So, something you may
Yeah.
want to consider. Like, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
steer you in one direction or other, but as you're looking at it,
So maybe,
If
I'm
they
still-
haven't been adjusted for inflation, it may be higher than we think, because I
Mhm.
think the first movie was just, you know, astronomical
yeah.
in box office. I don't know about the second though.
Yeah, and then there's the I don't remember what year it came out, but there's the old version of it too. Was that one or two movies?
it was a
It
TV
was
miniseries. So,
Oh,
like, there would not be box office receipts probably
okay,
for that.
yeah. It was a 2-night event.
gotcha.
So are we thinking that it is higher than,
Maybe third
yeah?
after what were the two you said would be the top, Isaac? Dracula and
And Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in that order, Dracula first, Halloween, and then it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then maybe Alien and maybe The Conjuring after that.
I'm afraid to say that I think The Conjuring might have beaten the Alien franchise.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. Like just the sheer
Yeah.
number of films that have. Oh man.
Because Alien is such a classic, but
Yeah.
a lot of people know it through other people and through clips than actually having gone to see the movies.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So are we thinking Dracula, Halloween, It, The Conjuring, and then Alien?
That'd be my list.
Yeah.
I'm cool
One
with
more
that.
time, so I can put your guesses, and this is most to least, right? Just make sure you guys are giving it to me the way that you're intending.
So he can tell us we're all wrong.
I was gonna say it's whatever you have on your paper in front of you, Chris. That's the answer, and that's what we went with.
So just making sure you guys are locking it in. So what do you think the most lucrative is?
Dracula.
Dracula.
Okay, and then next.
Halloween.
Okay, next.
It.
Okay, next.
Conjuring.
You guys agree? Conjuring.
Mm-hmm.
I
All
don't
right.
want it to be that, but I do agree it probably is.
I'm leaning on you
And-
two for everything but it. It's the only one that I have strong feelings about.
So that would be the Alien. Then you think is the least profitable out of the 5 for a franchise. Just making sure. Okay.
Yeah.
It saddens me, but yes.
Okay. So you guys were 100% correct in that it is the third, like that is the
Oh.
middle franchise on the list.
Noise.
So it has grossed just the 2 films have grossed almost $2 billion. So 1,173,000,000 $474,976 to be exact. So well done there.
However.
You had us in the
The-
first half with that 100% right. That was
yeah,
evil.
I wanted to give you some good news. Like, the highest grossing film on this list, I'm gonna kind of like tease this a little bit. Franchise is actually The Conjuring. So with 8 films total, most of them within the last decade, The Conjuring has brought in $2,132,543,448 and is the
Wow.
king of horror franchises currently. This list is from August of 2023, so I'm gonna say that's like recent enough to like I'm cool with it. So the least profitable in terms of box office receipts is actually the Halloween franchise with 13 films.
Wow.
And a measly, and I'm saying this sarcastically, $877 million, 128,000. Like, So
Wow.
despite being one of the more prolific franchises, not always box office gold. I imagine
That's
probably
wild.
some of those like late 80s, early 90s films probably contributed to that. Maybe some of that underperformance, but still pretty impressive. I mean, $877 million, and I think especially when you consider the cost to profit margin of the original is like one of the most impressive like independent films ever. So, with that, I'm gonna let you guys guess what you think, where you think. So we've covered three. Where do you think Alien and Dracula are gonna land now that I've given you some context? You want to change anything? So we have the second and the second to last spots available.
I would flip them now.
Yeah, I would swap them now.
Yes, Alien. Yes, take it.
You guys would be correct in doing so, because the Alien franchise at 8 films has grossed $1,653,000,000.
Yeah, baby.
And of course, more on the way. So that is
Woo.
bound to go up. I think there's 2 projects going on, at least one film, maybe a TV show.
Yep.
So that's a franchise that's not going away anytime soon. And hey, if it's as good as Prey was, I
Oh
say
man.
keep them coming.
Mhm.
And then that, of course, leaves us with Dracula, which, according to this list, 20 films, $891,973,763, inclusive of, I'm sure, everything. It says from 31 up through the Hammer films, and they even counted Van Helsing in this list as being the single biggest earner at $59 million.
Wow.
At least we were right about it beating Halloween.
Yeah.
There we
You
go.
were. That's good logic. That's sound logic there. I like how you likened it to James Bond too, because now every time they recast Dracula, I think there should be a similar like passionate debate that they have with Bond. Like,
Oh, that would be
get,
awesome, actually.
get
Yeah.
Idris Elba and his Dracula. Come on, get him in.
Yes, do it.
Oh man. All right. Are you guys curious, just really quickly, to hear what the other 5 franchises were to round out the top 10?
Sure, why not?
The ones that we didn't mention, so at 9 was Paranormal Activity with 7 films and $890 million. The Scream franchise with 6 films, $906 million. Believe it or not, like, I would have never thrown this on the list, like this franchise, but the Hannibal Lecter franchise at 5 films, $924 million, which is
Solid.
kind of wild. And then you probably could guess these other 2. So Saw at 9 films, just over $1 billion. And finally, Resident Evil at 10 films, $1.2 billion. So our old friend Paul S.W. Anderson, or whatever.
My man.
He puts asses in the seat, man. Or maybe, it could be, he's married, right, to yeah. So it might be a combination of the 2, but she's great in those.
Yeah.
Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining us, Isaac. On next week's episode, we are going to be talking about Creep. That is the confirmed film. We'll have special guest Grant on, who is a horror fanatic, and he says we're in for a treat with Creep. I looked it up. It looks like it is a Duplass brother project. I've not seen any of their fictional stuff. I've only seen The League and then Wild Wild Country, which is a great documentary. But he says we're in for a treat, so I'm very excited for that. And then, of course, we will be putting out a poll so that you, lovely audience members, can decide what the second film in that double feature is going to be. Isaac, before we go, please tell us a little bit about this upcoming book tour that you're doing, and anything else that you like to plug.
Yeah, it's a virtual book tour that's going to be happening this month. I've got a PR guy that handles that stuff, and he does a fantastic job. But I'll be posting links to blogs and interviews and things like that throughout the month as they arrive. And you can find me and anything you need to know about me at my site, isaacthorne.com, and that is Thorne with an E.
Fantastic. We will post a link to that, of course, in the episode description. I can personally vouch for how amazing your work is. Hellspring is a great Halloween book, as I found out, much to my like dismay and joy last year. Really, really fabulous read, and
Thank you so
I'm
much.
excited to check out The Gordon Place for one of my Halloween reads this year. Thank you, Will. Thank you, May, as well. Thank you, audience members. You can find us at X, or I should say on X, at ScreenQuest Pod, and I think perhaps it's time that we start branching out to other social media networks if the current state of X is any indication, but we'll keep you posted on that. And until next time, we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.